I don't see how you can do what he's doing, which is basically slowly killing himself and destroying his brain, truly just destroying it.
He was literally producing too much growth hormone. That's why you become a giant like that. And now his body's not producing anything. So he has to take stuff. But they say he can't take stuff. So he's just sick all the time.
Don't fight if you have to have that stuff.
He needed the money. He needed the money.
I mean, we are talking about a dire situation, if you ask me. I don't see any other way that his story ends in anything other than tragedy.
It's hard to watch.
Not good.
He was a giant among heavyweights, a fighter with rare power, a rare condition, and a name that echoed through MMA. From devastating knockouts to heartbreaking defeats, his journey is one of pain, persistence, and a brutal fight outside the cage that few ever saw. If you enjoy deep dives into MMA's most unforgettable stories, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Now let's step into the world of Bigfoot Silva. Born on September 14, 1979 in Brasilia, Brazil, Silva began his martial arts journey early.
I trained karate with 4 years old. With 17, trained jiu-jitsu.
I was born in Brasilia, but as I say, my heart belongs to Paraíba. I moved to Paraíba when I was really young. I love that state.
Antonio Silva earned the nickname Bigfoot, not as a gimmick, but because of his enormous frame and size 15 feet.
When I start training jiu-jitsu, I have a lot of people in my team. My first coach look for my feet and say, "Hey, Bigfoot, coming." And now everybody call me Bigfoot. In my city, 500 people, it's a small city. Nobody know Antonio Silva, but if you call Bigfoot, everybody know.
Towering at 6 feet 4 inches and weighing over 280 pounds, his intimidating presence alone was enough to turn heads.
In Brazil, I have a lot of different jobs. I work in security, bodyguard, work a lot in Brazil before the start fighting. My first coach in Brazil, all the time say, "Hey man, try Vale Tudo. You have a good jiu-jitsu, you have a good stand-up." And I say, "No man, because Vale Tudo in Brazil is no big money, no sponsor, nothing. I'm very young, with 19 years old, and I need working for help my family." One time I say, "Okay, I will try one time," and man, after that I love it and never more stop.
I am being sponsored by the city of Campina Grande in Paraíba. I am very happy being together with them.
In 2005, he relocated to the UK to begin his professional MMA career, training with the Wolf's Lair MMA Academy. That year, he stormed through the British MMA scene, stacking a 5-0 record, all first-round stoppages. His March 2005 debut ended in just 74 seconds by TKO. Promotions like Cage Warriors and Cage Rage became the battlegrounds for his rise. Fighters and fans marveled at his gigantic build and surprisingly agile skills. But what few knew early on was that his massive size wasn't just genetics. It was the result of a life-threatening condition. Despite his incredible size and strength, something about his growth seemed almost unnatural, and eventually doctors found the reason.
He had an operation on his pituitary gland. He had a tumor he was literally producing too much growth hormone. That's why you become a giant like that. So then he has this tumor removed, and now his body's not producing anything.
In 2006, during a routine MRI scan before a fight in Japan, Silva was diagnosed with acromegaly, a disorder caused by a tumor on the pituitary gland that leads to excessive growth hormone. Neither Silva nor his team had any idea. His manager, Alex Davis, later admitted, "I was ignorant about what acromegaly was. I just saw a big guy with big extremities." Had it developed in his teens, Silva's acromegaly would have caused gigantism and extreme height. But diagnosed later in life, it instead enlarged his hands, feet, and skull, thickening his skin and reshaping his appearance entirely. Following the diagnosis, Silva underwent surgery in 2007 and began monthly injections to manage the condition, a treatment that would become a lifelong routine. If left untreated, it can lead to diabetes, heart failure, and even death. It's typically treated with surgery, medication, or radiation, and in some cases, it can also disrupt hormone balance, lowering testosterone levels.
He had a real reason to take tests.
What made Silva unique also made his journey more complicated. His size came with medical risks, his skills came with controversy, and as his career progressed, the same traits that made him a fan favorite would become a subject of scrutiny and scandal. By 2006, Antonio Silva's early dominance earned him opportunities on bigger stages. He headed to Japan's K1 Heroes promotion and made an immediate impact, stopping wrestling legend Tom Erickson via TKO. Though Silva suffered his first professional loss later that year under the Bodog Fight banner, he bounced back in 2007 with a new opportunity stateside. The newly launched Elite XC CSAC signed Silva, banking on his towering frame and devastating knockout power to pull fans in. And Silva delivered. He racked up 3 straight victories, a brutal stoppage of Wesley "Cabbage" Carrera, a submission win over Jonathan Wieczorek, and a split decision over former UFC heavyweight champion Rico Rodriguez. These wins propelled Bigfoot into title contention. On July 26, 2008, at Elite XC, he faced Justin Eilers for the promotion's inaugural heavyweight championship. Silva dominated the bout and scored a second-round TKO via knees and punches, officially becoming the first-ever Elite XC heavyweight champion. It was a crowning moment, but the celebration didn't last long. Shortly after his title win, the California State Athletic Commission announced that Silva had tested positive for the banned anabolic steroid boldenone, an agent originally developed for horses. Silva and his team denied any intentional doping. They claimed the positive result came from an over-the-counter testosterone booster called Novadex, which Silva was allegedly using to manage hormone imbalances caused by his acromegaly. Manager Alex Davis even mocked the accusation. "If we were going to give him a steroid, it wouldn't be a horse steroid," he said. The truth is, he's probably the only guy on the whole UFC roster who should actually be using testosterone replacement therapy. They argued that boldenone's presence was either a fluke or a medical misinterpretation tied to Silva's condition.
How disappointed were you ultimately when you found out that they had ruled that you had tested positive?
I'm fine. I'm waiting for the hearing. I've already done a third urine test, came up negative. We're not guilty, we don't have nothing to fear. So I'm sure that I'll be the first one to prove my innocence in front of the commission. It came as a big surprise. I can't use substance like that because of prior health problems. I know that I'm clean and I'm innocent and I should be there fighting. And I'm gonna go into the end with this. I'm gonna prove my innocence.
But the commission didn't buy it. In October 2008, the CSAC handed Silva a 1-year suspension and fined him $2,500. Instead of waiting out the ban, Silva made a controversial decision. He took a fight in Japan just months later, openly defying the CSAC's authority. California responded swiftly. Silva's license was revoked, and his cornermen were threatened with penalties for aiding and abetting a suspended fighter. Critics were unforgiving. One headline slammed him for exploiting Japan's lax drug testing. This decision cast a shadow over his reputation. Bigfoot had become a polarizing figure, a knockout artist with real talent, but now labeled a drug cheat by many in the MMA world. Even as Elite XC folded later that year, the controversy lingered. They still technically recognized Silva as their champion, but to many fans and officials, the damage was already done. With US sanctions in effect, Silva spent 2009 re-establishing himself abroad. He resurfaced in Japan, competing in World Victory Road's Sengoku League. There, he secured 2 wins, including a submission over Jim York, reasserting himself on the global scene. Meanwhile, back in the US, Strikeforce was building one of the most stacked heavyweight rosters in MMA history, with names like Fedor Emelianenko, Alistair Overeem, and Fabricio Verdum headlining. Despite still being technically suspended in California, Strikeforce signed Silva in late 2009. His debut came against Fabricio Verdum. Silva lost by unanimous decision, but impressed many by going the distance with the BJJ legend and former Pride champion. Then came the night that changed everything. February 12th, 2011. Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix quarterfinal. Antonio Silva versus Fedor Emelianenko.
My dreams come true when I see Fedor on the other side of the cage.
Do you think Fedor is going to win this weekend?
Who's he fighting?
Bigfoot!
Antonio Silva.
Oh, that's a tough fight. Yeah. Fedor should win and win easily.
Fedor was no ordinary opponent. He was the mythical figure of heavyweight MMA, a man with only 2 career losses, one by cut and the other by submission. Nobody expected Bigfoot to win, but what unfolded was one of the most shocking upsets in MMA history.
Remember him on TRT? He was such a nightmare. He was
He crushed Fedor.
huge.
He
Dude.
crushed Fedor.
In round 2, Silva used his 40-pound weight advantage to take Fedor down and rain down relentless ground and pound.
You're literally fighting a giant.
Yeah.
That picture of just
Dude.
a giant on top of this kind of fat Russian and just fucking.
Dude, he was like 300 pounds. He was like a building planted on his chest.
Hammerfist! He's got to get his feet on that cage. There's too big of a man on top of him. He needs a little more height.
Remember when Fedor went for an ankle lock on him? His giant foot. And Fedor's like hugging on his big toe and he's going like this.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you fucked up, Fedor.
He fucked up.
6 seconds. Nope, not at all. He'll just wait.
Fedor's right eye swelled shut under the brutal assault. When the bell rang, the cage-side doctor stepped in and called it. Bigfoot had done it. He didn't just win, he stopped Fedor.
When I win, it's a huge happiness. It's all happiness.
He was the second person to hand Emelianenko a legitimate defeat. Silva himself was stunned. The arena erupted.
Bigfoot Silva!
The victory launched Silva into the tournament semifinals, where he faced Olympic wrestler and future UFC champ Daniel Cormier.
Remember when DC fought him? And I go, dude, you fucked him up. He goes, how can you miss? How can you miss? He goes, that's the easiest fight in the world. I threw a 1-2, they both landed. His head was this wide.
Cormier knocked Silva out, halting his tournament run, but by then the damage had been done to the sport's hierarchy. By the end of 2011, his professional record stood at 16-3. He was seen as a real threat, a Brazilian behemoth with both size and skill. Media outlets hyped his marketability, and promoters saw him as more than a fighter. He was a spectacle. The only thing left was the big show, the UFC. When Strikeforce folded in 2012, Antonio Bigfoot Silva was among the heavyweights absorbed into the UFC's growing roster.
He really is a unique athlete. As big as he is, he's extremely fast, he's extremely agile.
The UFC gives an opportunity for fight the best in the world. I'm so happy in my mind. I'm the best in strike and the best in jiu-jitsu and the best in wrestling. I believe in myself.
But his debut was anything but gentle. At UFC 146, he was thrown into the fire against former champion Cain Velasquez. The result was gruesome. Velasquez immediately took Silva down and unleashed a savage barrage of elbows that split Bigfoot's forehead wide open. Blood poured like a horror movie, across his face, his chest, the canvas. The fight ended in a first-round TKO. Silva was left with a long, visible scar and a haunting image that would follow him throughout his UFC career. But he didn't stay broken. Just 5 months later, Bigfoot returned with vengeance, stopping Travis Brown by TKO in October 2012. It was a strong statement, but nothing compared to what came next. On February 2nd, 2013 at UFC 156, Silva was matched against the towering Dutchman Alistair Overeem, a former K1 Grand Prix and Strikeforce champion who many thought would cruise to victory.
Silva kept pushing up against him and getting in his face closer and closer, so I tried to stop him. And Silva said, you better start respecting me. And then he said, you have to destroy me.
Overeem showed nothing but disdain for Silva, taunting him, lowering his hands, and openly disrespecting his power. That would prove to be a mistake. In round 3, Bigfoot unleashed hell, a violent, explosive flurry ending in a right hand that sent Overeem collapsing backward against the cage. Out cold. Silva roared over his fallen rival in primal fury as the crowd erupted. It was one of the most iconic UFC heavyweight knockouts in recent memory.
He rocked him. Big uppercut. This is champions. Unbelievable. What a huge knockout.
That knockout was incredible. What did you say to Alistair after the knockout?
Get up. I want to fight. Now I show for him that he need respect the other fighter.
Later, Silva declared, "This was bigger than my victory over Fedor. I shocked the world again."
Dana mentioned you might get to fight Cain Velasquez. How excited would you be for that?
I'm very excited. I want that, you know.
The KO instantly earned him a title shot. Almost exactly 1 year after his UFC debut, Silva got his shot at redemption and the gold. UFC 160, May 25th, 2013. Las Vegas. A rematch with Cain Velasquez, this time with the UFC Heavyweight Championship on the line. Silva came in determined, claiming to be mentally stronger, more focused. But the story repeated itself. Cain dropped Silva early with a right hand and finished him with brutal ground and pound. A TKO in round 1. It was a crushing defeat, swift and decisive, showing that while Silva could topple giants, he couldn't crack the elite dominance of Cain Velasquez. Despite the loss, Bigfoot's rise was undeniable. He had defeated Brown and Overeem in spectacular fashion. He had earned a UFC title shot, headlined a major pay-per-view, and entered 2013 with a record of 18-5. He was now seen as the ultimate underdog threat, unpredictable, powerful, and capable of pulling off some of the biggest upsets in heavyweight history. Silva wasn't the champion, but he was a man who could knock out anyone, and fans respected that. Fresh off a failed title bid, Antonio Bigfoot Silva stepped into the octagon one more time before 2013 ended, and what followed became the stuff of heavyweight legend. December 7th, 2013, Brisbane, Australia.
Remember his fight against Mark Hunt when he was on TRT and they just went back and forth?
Oh, that's
it was like
right.
the greatest heavyweight fight of all time.
Afterwards, he
Tested
couldn't
hot.
take a shot.
Silva faced off against Mark Hunt, the Super Samoan, in a matchup of raw power and iron chins. For 5 brutal rounds, the two heavyweights stood toe-to-toe, trading bombs in a display of almost superhuman toughness. Blood painted Silva's chest. Hunt's face was swollen beyond recognition. Neither man backed down. By the final horn, the arena was in awe. 2 judges scored the fight even, a rare majority draw. Dana White called it one of the greatest heavyweight fights in UFC history. Fans simply called it a war.
Fight of the night. fight of the year, more like it. Congratulations to you, Bigfoot, and wonderful performance by both you and Mark Hunt.
And after he knocked me down, I'm a little bit tired after that, but I don't give up, and I do my best.
Each earned a $50,000 Fight of the Night bonus, and the bout was instantly hailed as a Fight of the Year contender. But the glory didn't last. Weeks later, news broke. Silva had failed his post-fight drug test. He had tested positive for elevated testosterone levels, a TRT violation, even though he was one of the few fighters medically exempt to use it due to his acromegaly. Silva had been undergoing regular monitoring, and his dosage had reportedly been adjusted by doctors. But on fight night, his testosterone levels spiked above the legal threshold.
Bigfoot has stepped into a legal mess. Silva had failed his Fight Night 33 post-fight drug test with elevated levels of testosterone. Silva is now planning to take legal action against the doctor that instructed him to increase his amount of testosterone intake the week before the fight. His levels were extremely low the week out and gave him an injection that sent Silva's levels through the allowable limits.
Silva defended himself, writing, "My testosterone level continued to be low, so I was recommended by the doctor to increase the dosage. Unfortunately, my level increased too much. I never tried doing anything wrong for my fight."
I also have to feel for Bigfoot Silva in this sense. So he's essentially going through the same doctors the UFC uses. So it's like, okay, I'm just going to listen to them. They're giving me what I feel, they say it's necessary. I'm taking it, and then I get dunged. So I can understand, and I'm sure you can understand why he'd be pissed off.
I have a prescription for using the TRT, and the doctor gave me a medicine. I use exactly medicine that he have me, but my level is so high. I don't know why. I think he make a big mistake with me.
But the damage was done. The UFC, which self-regulated the event in Australia, handed Silva a 9-month suspension and overturned the draw to a no contest. Mark Hunt, one who had already fought multiple PED users in his career, was furious. He blasted Silva on social media, calling him a rat and demanding tougher penalties for fighters who cheat. For Silva, this was his second drug-related incident, and the backlash was severe. Fans grew cynical. Pundits questioned the legitimacy of his past performances, and the UFC responded by abolishing TRT exemptions altogether.
Dana perhaps stated our commitment best when he said, "We believe our athletes should compete based on their natural abilities and on an even playing field."
His Fight of the Night bonus was reallocated to Hunt, and he spent nearly all of 2014 inactive and suspended. The war with Hunt showcased Bigfoot's heart and resilience, a career-defining performance. But the TRT scandal turned it into a cautionary tale. Even a fighter with a genuine medical condition couldn't escape the stigma of cheating once the test results came in. When Antonio Bigfoot Silva returned from suspension in September 2014, there was cautious optimism.
People saying that Bigfoot won't be the same in this fight because he's off the TRT now. Do you feel any pressure?
Before the first time I fought Mark Hunt, I never used a TRT, and I fought the best guys in the world, Overeem, Travis Brown, Fedor, Emelianenko, and I never used that. Now, after this fight, I fixed something, and now my body's good, my weight's so good, I'm very relaxed, my mind's good, and I'm ready to do a war again.
But that optimism vanished quickly. His comeback fight, a rematch against Andrei Arlovski in front of a home crowd in Brasilia, ended in disaster. Arlovski knocked Bigfoot out in just one round, a brutal reminder that time waits for no man. Then came February 2015. Silva stepped into the cage with former champion Frank Mir. It took just 1 minute and 40 seconds for Mir to finish him with punches. The once fearsome Bigfoot now looked slow, tentative, breakable. Fans and pundits alike began to wonder, was the end of TRT affecting his durability? Or had the wars simply caught up to him?
And now his body's not producing anything. So he has to take stuff. But they say he can't take stuff. So he's just sick all the time.
In August 2015, Silva showed signs of life. He fought in Rio and stopped Soa Palele via TKO, a powerful, crowd-pleasing performance. But it was a false dawn. 2 months later, he faced Mark Hunt again in a rematch of their 2013 war.
The last fight, the ending was somewhat controversial due to the drug test. Are you happy that you're getting this chance now to fight him again to put all that to rest?
Now I'm gonna prove for everybody that I don't need the TRT, I don't need nothing to do a great fight.
This time, there was no epic battle. Hunt put Bigfoot down early in round 1 with clean, precise punches. No draw, no glory, just another knockout. By late 2015, Silva had been knocked out in 5 of his last 7 fights. But the UFC gave him another shot. May 2016, he faced Stefan Skyscraper Struve. The fight ended in just 16 seconds, one of the shortest main events in UFC history.
People have been saying after your losses that maybe you should consider retirement. I know you said that's not the case. You feel good, you want to fight into your 40s, is that it?
Yeah, man, I have a 37 years old. No, I'm a young guy compared with another guy. My body's very well. I'm training hard every day. If one day my body's gonna be tired, I will retire. But now I don't think that.
Then came his final UFC appearance in September 2016 against Roy Big Country Nelson. Silva was knocked out again, this time in round 2. It was clear Bigfoot's chin was gone. His reflexes were fading. His body couldn't keep up with the violence anymore. After the Nelson loss, the UFC made its decision. They released Silva, ending his UFC tenure with a 1-5 record since the Hunt No contest. By the end of 2016, he was 37 years old, a veteran of some of the sport's most unforgettable wars. But now, he was a fighter who could no longer take a punch. Fans began to grow uneasy watching him compete. The man who once toppled Fedor in Overeem was now being dropped in minutes. Some in the media called him a shell of his former self, but Bigfoot, he still wasn't done. His story wasn't over, but the decline had clearly begun. After his UFC release, Antonio Bigfoot Silva could have walked away. He didn't. Silva kept fighting. Not for legacy, but because he had to. In interviews, he admitted money was tight and fighting was the only thing he truly knew how to do. With a family to support and no clear path outside the cage, he took whatever bouts came his way. His medical bills, driven by his acromegaly diagnosis, were crushing, costing between $6,000 to $8,000 every month. Each bout, no matter how dangerous, became a way to keep up with the mounting costs of simply staying alive. It wasn't about chasing glory anymore. It was survival.
Bigfoot Silva was a guy that when they made him get off the test, that was the rudest thing ever.
Don't fight if you have to have that
He
stuff.
needed the money. He needed the money.
Instead, he sought reinvention, venturing into other combat sports. But each step forward only deepened the concern. In October 2017, Silva signed on for a shocking challenge, a kickboxing match against Rico Verhoeven, the reigning Glory heavyweight champion.
I always want to fight and just stand up. Everything is new for me.
Widely considered the best in the world. The venue? Glory 46 in Guangzhou, China. The stakes? High. The danger? Higher. Silva had no professional kickboxing experience. He had been knocked out 7 times in 4 years. Critics called it reckless, even cruel.
Bigfoot needs to stop. I think he's won 1 out of his last 6 or something.
Yeah.
1 out of 5, but he's been knocked out 6 times.
I thought he was going to retire.
Bigfoot just, he looks slow. His body's different. He needs to stop. I don't know how big that head is to take those shots. If that hurts him or, I'm not sure. It has to stop. Has to stop.
But Silva remained defiant. Sometimes critics are just jealous. I came from a humble family, he said. When I step into the ring, anything can happen. His manager Alex Davis backed the fight, insisting, impossible doesn't exist. Bigfoot trained hard, bringing in elite names like Pedro Rizzo and Guto Innocente. But training couldn't close the gap. In the second round, Verhoeven landed a crushing head kick, another devastating knockout on Silva's growing list. Still, Silva refused to regret it. Bigfoot was out of his depth, and the consequences were stacking up. Undeterred, Silva embraced the next brutal frontier, bare-knuckle boxing. On October 19, 2019, he debuted at BKFC 8 in Tampa, Florida, facing fellow UFC veteran Gabriel Gonzaga in the main event.
Then how about Gonzaga and Bigfoot Silva fought bare knuckle? That's how they're doing, sir. They found a bare knuckle and Gonzaga pieced Big Silva.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch.
Not good.
It was marketed as a battle of 2 former legends. What it became was another grim reminder of Bigfoot's decline. Silva landed a few shots, but by round 2, Gonzaga's power overwhelmed him. A series of punches dropped Silva violently to the canvas. His face once again was left swollen and bloodied. Fans were disturbed. Critics questioned how a fight like this was ever sanctioned. Silva and Gonzaga tried to downplay the backlash, brushing it off as 2 experienced fighters making their own choices. But for many, it wasn't choice. It was desperation, and it was painful to watch. The calls grew louder. It's time for Bigfoot to stop. But he wouldn't. Not yet. By the time the 2020s arrived, Antonio Bigfoot Silva was no longer a top contender. He had become something far more unsettling. A journeyman, drifting from promotion to promotion, fighting anywhere he could still get booked. From 2016 to 2022, Silva endured an astonishing 11-fight losing streak across MMA, kickboxing, boxing, and bare-knuckle bouts. All but one ended the same way, knockout.
Bigfoot KO'd yesterday, 11th time in a row. Thoughts? It's very unfortunate.
He's gonna die.
He was stopped by rising talents, obscure names, and regional hopefuls. Each fight another brutal chapter in a career unraveling in public. In 2017, Vitaly Minakov knocked him out in Russia. In 2021, an unknown fighter, Quentin Domingos, did the same in Serbia. In 2022, it was Oleg Popov in Russia. Even his lone decision loss, a June 2023 fight in France, only served to extend the streak. The punishment continued. The concern grew louder.
His story, I don't know how it's going to go. It's going to go real bad. I don't see how you can do what he's doing, which is basically slowly killing himself and destroying his brain, truly just destroying it. I mean, utterly inadvisable, traumatic contact. If you're in a car accident and you get a concussion, your brain is sensitive for some time thereafter. It's easy to get a concussion if you were to be in another car accident, let's say a week later or something like that, even if it wasn't nearly as devastating a wreck. He's just doing that. And among all the other damage he already had, I mean, we are talking about a dire situation, if you ask me. And I know people who love him have tried to intervene. It has not worked. I don't really know why, but I believe them. I'm sure that they have tried. I don't see any other way that his story ends in anything other than tragedy.
Fans watching these fights were no longer excited. They were worried. His longtime manager, Alex Davis, publicly pleaded with Silva to stop. The plan was for him to stop fighting 8 KOs ago. I let go at that point. Could not be a part of this. You cannot defend a man from his own self. Regulators also stepped in. The Association of Boxing Commissions, ABC, reportedly refused to license Silva in the US. Their message was clear. It's too dangerous. His brain can't take it anymore. But that didn't stop him.
Hi everyone, now it's official. I'm signed the contract to fight on March 9. I'm so excited for that.
Silva kept finding fights in jurisdictions with looser oversight, willing to let him step into the cage again. Finally, in late 2022, Bigfoot seemed to come to terms with reality. He announced his retirement after a 19-year career filled with highs, heartbreak, and hard lessons. Everybody has a time. My time is gone, Silva said. I'm grateful for what I lived in this sport. The nightmare, it seemed, was over. But then, in classic Bigfoot fashion, he unretired just 1 week later, teasing a rematch against the journeyman who had just beaten him in France. The MMA community held its breath again. Finally, by mid-2023, Silva posted on Instagram, "I'm 100% retired." This time, everyone hoped it was real, and for his sake, it needed to be. Antonio Bigfoot Silva's legacy in combat sports is a story of contradictions, glorious triumphs, and devastating falls. In his prime, he was a force of nature, a fearsome heavyweight capable of doing what few dared to dream. He will always be remembered for the night he toppled the myth of Fedor Emelianenko in 2011, the explosive knockout of Alistair Overeem when no one gave him a chance, and the 5-round war with Mark Hunt, one of the greatest heavyweight fights of all time. Those moments etched Silva into MMA history. He fought for the UFC title, held the Elite XC heavyweight belt, and stood toe-to-toe with legends. 2 major PED controversies marred his legacy. Both came with explanations, medical reasons tied to his acromegaly, but public opinion doesn't always care for nuance. His name became entwined with UFC drug test failures, mentioned in the same breath as other tainted stars. And then came the end, a brutal, prolonged decline. Loss after loss, knockout after knockout. Fans watched in horror. At one point, an analyst grimly predicted, he is going to have probably the worst documented case of CTE ever if he continues to fight. Today, Antonio Silva is remembered with equal parts respect and regret. Respect for the unforgettable chaos he brought to the cage. Regret that he couldn't walk away sooner. Regret that the final chapters of his career were filled with more pain than pride. In the annals of MMA, Bigfoot Silva stands as both a conqueror of giants and a cautionary tale, a man who gave us unforgettable nights. Silva has firmly moved into a post-fight chapter, dedicating himself to coaching and family life. He's now focused on teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and grappling, passing his knowledge on to the next generation in Brazil. He's just a big guy with a big heart, one of his coaches once said. And maybe, in the end, that was both his greatest strength and his greatest curse. And if you want to know how Yoel Romero beat USADA and walked out with $27 million, check out our next documentary.